we should probably get to ranking this side. And I think when we think about legacy, it does go so much beyond just the results, probably.
Yeah, absolutely. There's two strands to the legacy of this particular team. The way I see it is, as you've mentioned, you've got the cultural references. The documentary definitely helped with that. But to have a documentary made about you by the BBC is no mean feat. I think that's, especially this is in a day where we never had streaming services where you kind of had endless channels. You know, this is going back to the day where we had a handful of terrestrial channels, and if you were lucky enough, you had satellite TV. And then you got the very successful, I think, TV series with James Nesbitt, another frustrated Manchester United fan, and Ricky Tomlinson, who's been in a number of brilliant things, including another brilliant football documentary, Mike Bassett, England manager.
Indeed.
And also, Graham, and again, this is the frustrating thing with this bloody story. Doncaster Belles were the first women's team to record a cup final songs.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. I did see that. I would love to hear that. Yeah, that is a proper first. You're not just replicating the great football successes we've seen in the men's game, but also some of the missteps we've seen along the way. But no, there has to be a chance. Maybe their version was better than Coventry City's shooting to win.
Blues shooting to win. But yes, there is a second strand of legacy attached to this team, and it's the actual the form on the pitch. And with the exception of a couple of peaks, it's really a downward journey with lots of misfortune along the way. And maybe that could be down to various reasons: mishandling, dislike from the associations because they're not as glamorous as your Arsenals, your Chelseas, your Manchester City, Manchester United, Liverpools that play in the Women's Super League week in, week out. But yeah, now they play in the fourth tier. And so football-wise, this particular team from the early 90s winning 2 doubles in the space of 3 seasons and competing with the brilliant Arsenal team of that particular era doesn't have an on-the-pitch legacy.
No, absolutely.
But
so
they do. It's worth saying, though, that there are a number of well-known household names that have played for Doncaster Belles. Mary Earps, Sue Smith, Lily Bright, Bethany England have all played at one point in their time for Doncaster Belles. So it proves that Doncaster Belles is still able to fledgling some of these players into bigger and better things. I think Beth England and Millie Bright both started at Doncaster Belles.
Yeah, as you say, I think the opportunity there does remain, which would be absolutely fantastic. So where are you going to rank them, Jamie? 5 categories of greatness, from all-time greats, true greats, touch of greatness, edge of greatness, blink of greats, or not necessarily great, but without them, we wouldn't be where we are today. What do you reckon?
So in their 3 seasons where they won their 2 doubles and they missed out in the middle against Arsenal, they played a total of 50 games. They won 46. That's in the league. That's a 92% win ratio. Their loss ratio was 6%. There's nothing like it in any team that we've covered on this podcast that has a record that can boast a 92% win ratio over a sustained period of time, such as 3 football seasons. In that period, they've scored an average of 5.5 goals per game, and they've conceded 0.6 goals per game. They're winning games 5-0, basically, every week. And this is the era when Arsenal were in that particular league as well. So they've won 2 doubles, which is quite an achievement for any football team. So they've got some titles. And I think it's in an era where they're not being paid to play. They're not really getting any support from any of the associations. They have to do everything off their own back. They have to organise themselves because the support and the funding is desperately lacking in the women's game at that particular moment. So they're successful off the pitch in terms of how they organise themselves. And we know that they had an incredible bond and team spirit. So in terms of how they're sustaining themselves, it's pretty commendable. It's highly commendable. And then we've got the legacy of a TV documentary, a book, as you referenced, by Peter Davis, I think, or Pete Davis. Somebody wrote a book about this particular team. And when you and I were talking about what's the next women's team we should cover, we both knew about Doncaster Belles. We both had the idea of their heritage. It wasn't a surprise. It wasn't like, who, what, hey. We knew Doncaster Belles, and we know that because obviously they go right back to the origins of the women's game. Long story short, I am going to start. I'm going to put them in tier 2. I'm going to put them as true greats.
So, yeah. I think it's difficult to argue with that, to be honest. I think you can definitely make the case that how strong was the league they're operating in. That, I'm not sure all those sides were the strongest. So, how, on the one hand, you think, oh, well, are they just kind of flat track bullies? But on the other case, this isn't achieved through, I mentioned them earlier, but when you look at Total Network Solutions, Total Network Solutions, or the new Saints as they are, they have a similar sort of dominance, but theirs is financial. They have a financial advantage. There's an investment that they make. I don't doubt that once Doncaster Belles are playing well, are established as leaders, they're able, to attract players from the localities to play. But I think, their strength of achievement isn't bolstered by, them paying to do that. So I think, for that reason, it still is unbelievably impressive. I think, actually, in terms of the numbers, it's like nothing we've seen. As you say, the win ratio of 92% is just unreal. And they're just remarkably consistent. And bear in mind, they're doing this with, with day jobs, whatever else is going on in your life. And from what I can tell, across that 3 years, there's one game against Wimbledon where they kind of underachieve. That's really quite something. When they will probably stops it from going higher is, when Arsenal join, that it's not that they start struggling, but they, it's about, it becomes a duopoly. They don't continue that domination, and I think that probably stops it from becoming category above. But I don't think you can go any lower than true grades, because their legacy is so huge. So they are pioneers once again.
I'm just kind of waiting for your verdict.
Verdict is in. Doncaster Belles, true great.